Welcome to Dyscastia, a podcast for parents and teachers about the best way to support kids living with learning difficulties. My name's Michael Shanahan, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm casting to you today from the lands of the Kaurna people. Today's episode, I'm joined by Sharon Collon from the Functional Family, and we're going to be talking about ADHD. I've done an episode on ADHD before, and even though it's not typically considered like a learning difficulty like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, there is a high crossover. And so I thought, let's do another episode and let's get an ADHD expert in. Thus, we have Sharon. Welcome, Sharon. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Michael, I'm so excited to be here. I have listened to that episode that you did previously and it was amazing. So I would love to build on that as well. So my name's Sharon Collon. I am the owner and founder of the Functional Family. It was almost called the Dysfunctional Family. I think by saying that. But I'm ever the optimist. So that's why I called it the Functional Family. I am a credentialed ADHD coach who is families trained. Now I lean into that part hard because anytime people talking about ADHD coaching, we definitely want them to have ADHD specific training like ADDCA in New York, and we want them to be credentialed with the International Coaching Federation. I really do push that point because anyone can call themselves an ADHD coach, and we really want our ADHD coaches to have the right experience. So flagging that. I'm lucky enough to have a beautiful business where I support gorgeous families like my own. I have 3 beautiful boys. All of them have ADHD. We've got some specific learning disorders in there. We've got Tourettes and Autism and ODD and all of the letters that make us a beautiful, complex web of gorgeous humans. And the reason that I got into it is because our home life was really chaotic. And my husband had a terrible time growing up in school with ADHD. It was the 80s and 90s. And to be fair, we didn't do our best work.
No.
I'm sure you know from your own experience. And he had a terrible time and he was never invited to a birthday party. He was excluded a lot. And when I looked at my beautiful boys, my 3 beautiful boys who I knew were very similar in presentation to my husband, I was like, how can I avoid this trauma for them?
Yes.
And so that's how I started researching and getting into it. And then, of course, formally training in it to support other families like my own.
That's brilliant. It's so good to be able to turn that kind of horrible lived experience into something positive for other people. You know, I often think to myself, I don't want people to have to go through the kind of difficulty I went through when my kids were diagnosed and, you know, we're just kind of lost into what do you do next. And ADHD being part of that mix makes it even more difficult, if you know what I mean. Not that I want to say that it's a negative thing, but it's just a lot to deal with, isn't it? As a parent or even as an educator, you know, you describe quite a mix of neurodivergence there, which I imagine makes life reasonably unpredictable from a traditional sense.
I mean, look, it runs at a very intense level, our household. It needs to be filmed for a documentary series. I think that it would be a very, very good watch from the outside. But, you know, we waited months for our diagnosis appointment. Like, you know, some people are waiting years. And then I got the diagnosis. It was no surprise, right? Yeah, like I wasn't surprised by any of our family's diagnosis. But what I was surprised of is that I was waiting for the practical strategies piece. Yes. Right? Like I was waiting for, now you can do this.
Yep.
Right. And what we walked out was a photocopied pamphlet.
Right.
And I was like, well, what on earth am I going to do? I can't even keep these kids alive, right? Like they're on the roof, of my house. Yep. And I didn't know what to do. I was very aware that I didn't have the skills to be able to support my kids in the best way.
Yes.
And, and all of a sudden I'm in charge of supporting, trying to advocate for them at school and be able to support them in sports teams and things like that. And I didn't have the skills for that.
Yeah.
So I'm very aware that a lot of parents are thrown into that the overwhelming world of ADHD. And just like, we were talking about before, social media is pumping out information with about ADHD. And to be honest, they did a study in America a couple of years ago, and 50% of it was incorrect.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of
I'm surprised
misinformation.
it's even 50% that is correct.
So I really narrowed in on that and really wanted to make sure that I had the right training, the right experience to be able to support families with practical skills, because that's the missing link for a lot of families. Like our kids absolutely need psychology support. We absolutely need speech therapy and OT and all of the things. But like, how do we get out the door in the morning?
Yeah, that's right.
How do we actually function as a family? Like, it's not just child-centric therapies. We need to be able, and that's why I trained as a families coach as well, because I think we need to look at the whole family unit. Whether there's neurotypical people, neurodivergent people in there, we need to look at everyone and how we run and what's best for that unique family, because everyone's so unique and so different. And it has to work for them. It has to feel good for them to be in it.
Yeah. And so what does an ADHD coach do?
Oh, I love it.
Because to be honest, I mean, I've heard of an ADHD coach, but I don't actually know a lot about what does that mean? What kind of support do you provide? What kind of difficulties do you help people navigate?
I love this question because it is something that not a lot of people know the answer to. Mm-hmm. I just came back from the ADDCA conference, so the ADHD Professionals Association conference. And I can tell you that ADHD coaching is having its moment. Like, there was so many speakers that referred to it in such a positive light that their clients were consistently coming back and telling them that they are getting fabulous results from coaching. So what a credentialed ADHD coach does is we are trained in executive function skills that are commonly impaired with ADHD. Yep. So if you think of it in the difference to, say, a psychologist is trained in the why and trained in trauma and the emotional response, we are not trained in that. So if you're going for those things, we are trained to refer to a psychologist. Yeah. But what we are trained in is the practical life skill stuff. So think about things like time awareness, task prioritization, the practical things, the side of things like getting to work on time, yes. Getting to, we're there to support you with those things. And a families trained coach is really the next level of training. We're looking at the whole family unit. So how that family runs, and it runs in accordance to their values, because parenting, we get told and we've been modeled that we apply pressure for a lot of parenting strategies. And we know that pressure and ADHD does not go so well.
No.
Have you ever noticed that your child with ADHD hates being told what to do? Have you guys noticed that?
No.
No. Oh, absolutely not. No, they always say yes. But what we do what we've been modeled and in parenting is to apply more pressure. So, yes. And that just sends our children into fight or flight. So parents that I work with are typically very confused. So we might start off gentle parenting and then we flip to strict parenting and then we go to how we were parented and then we're like, go to your room, like sort it out, and use exclusion. And it is really confusing as a parent because you're absorbing all this information about ADHD, but when your own child is dysregulated in front of you and you love that child so much and you become dysregulated, you really struggle to know what the right course of action is in that situation. And so parents end up flip-flopping all over the place. We've become really inconsistent with what we're doing. We're not sure if we should throw a consequence, and then we get a bit desperate and we're like, we're taking the iPad away.
Yes.
And so we start doing all these things that probably don't feel good in the moment. And it is really an exhausting place to sit as a parent. And we know that parents of kids with ADHD, regardless or not whether they have ADHD themselves, the divorce rate is higher, burnout is higher. Like there's a whole host of things that come along with it just because of this increased mental load and confusion. So that's really where I like to sit, because I like to be able to support that and give parents and shortcut that journey everything that I wish I had have had when my first son was diagnosed.
Yeah, and that's so thinking of it from the perspective of education and thinking, particularly kids that might be living with learning difficulties in addition to ADHD, which is a good percent, likely almost 50%. Home is really a bit of a home base, isn't it? Because school is really difficult and you want to be able to get home and have a bit of a safe haven. And so if you get home and that's also chaotic and full of pressure like school is, there's kind of nowhere to go for a kid that's really struggling. So I love the idea of being able to structure home to be consistent and a safe place. And that's really going to help students learning, because that's going to be modelling that kind of behaviour that they need, the regulation skills that they need when they might be at school. And as you say, applying that extra pressure puts executive function out the window, and that's exactly what we need to be learning. We actually need to be able to focus and pay attention when we're learning in order to take it in. And if our fight or flight system's through the roof, it's just, it's going to go in one ear and out the other, isn't it? Mm. And so what sort of strategies do you use? So let's say you were coming into my house, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when my kids had just been diagnosed, and here's me, a parent that lives with ADHD, and I'm happy to admit is all over the place, and much to my wife's frustration, I love geeing up the kids and building up that crazy chaos.
I call that calming up. Okay?
Yeah, calming up, that's right. How does it work? What do you do? Do you start off with a meeting with the family? Like, what's the kind of format and structure of it?
So I love I'm very motivated to save time, effort, right? Because I think there's this whole myth of, and this happens at school as well, this trying harder out of ADHD, right? And so there's this perception, and a lot of strategies do rely on this, like just try harder. And this is what we fall back to as parents as well. And I don't sign up to that at all. I think that you need to try differently.
Yep. And
so one of the things that I love to do is to support parents to work out how that looks for them, for their family. So how I go in, there's a bit of a structure to it, but I go in and listen to the family's pain points. So it's not usually the big meltdowns that cause families the most amount of grief. It is the daily friction points, the everyday grind of little bits of friction on top of little bits of friction. And it can be really, really exhausting for parents and for the whole family, actually. And so I will first up meet with the parents and work out what that family is struggling with. Now, it's been my experience that most parents support meltdowns and the big events really, really well. Now, to be honest, when a child goes into meltdown, our only strategy is to move to safety anyway and to support them to be able to regulate down from that. But what does cause burnout and what does cause them a lot of distress is the day-to-day friction points. So if they know, I call these predictable problems, if they know that every day when their child gets in the car, they're going to have a problem with the seatbelt, or they know that every time they ask their child to brush their teeth, the child is going to become dysregulated. And even regardless of whether the child throws that friction point that day, that their body, their nervous system the parent's nervous system is having a response because we're becoming a little bit stressed about that, right? Because we're anticipating it. And those are what we call, whether it's a child having a friction point or a more family-centered friction point, I am listening out for those friction points. Then we set targets around those, because what we want to do is see if we can make those times a little bit easier, rather than just keep going in the same friction point, hitting our head against a brick wall. We want to create some scaffolding around those.
Can you give an example? Sorry to interrupt. Can you give an example of a friction point?
Yes. So let's use the toothbrush example, because that's a really nice, easy one. There's different paths I take families down. So one of them's really understanding ADHD and what that looks like for that family. Then there's the low-hanging fruit, which is environmental changes. And this is where I'm going to use that toothbrush example, because an environmental change is an easy thing to change. Setting up your environment to suit the ADHD brain, easy, run-of-the-mill, quick win territory for a family.
Yep.
Because when we focus on changing the individual, like one of the individuals, whoever's experiencing the friction or causing the friction, that's the slowest road.
Yeah.
Okay. So an environmental change, that's an easy win. And then we look at going through and systematically solving these predictable problems and experimenting with it, and giving the parents a real tool belt of tools to throw at it. Because we know ADHD is situational and variable and things change a lot. So we need to have a little tool belt that we wear, that we know when friction comes up, we can throw things at it. So for example, for the toothbrush example, I'll use my son Harvey for this one. He had a real problem brushing his teeth. Every time I asked him to do it, there was this real escalating in behavior and a lot of tense relationships for me. And now because I'm an ADHD coach, I assumed that I'm awesome at this. Right? I was like, you know what? He's having problems because he has sensory sensitivities and he doesn't like the feeling of the toothbrush and the toothpaste. And so what did I go and do? I assumed that, and I went and bought all of these different things, and we were going through the motions of going through working out, trying all the different toothbrushes and all the different flavored toothpastes and all of that, because I had decided that he had a sensitivity to that sensory input.
Yep.
Now, this is a real shame, and it's a bit of a crap example because I was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because I did
probably a good example for that reason.
This is what parents do. We assume, and even as a parent, if you have ADHD, we assume that the child is experiencing a certain friction point because of our experience of ADHD, and it really can be a completely different thing.
Yes.
And so I really like to have a collaborative approach because, number one, our kids don't like being told what to do. We really value autonomy. And also because the ADHD brain is uniquely wired to problem solve. And when we can help our children develop that skill, it is the most beautiful life skill. We can experiment, we can fail, we can try things, we can try different things, and we can work out what works for us. So in this toothbrush example, I was saying to Harvey, I started coaching him through it. And I was like, hey, buddy, I've noticed that there's this problem, a little bit of predictable problem when we come to brushing our teeth. Yep. What can we do to make this easier for you? And through this conversation, we came up with 3 different solutions. Now, my kids, because they're my kids, will always come up with a bogus solution that sounds really random, and I always run it. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Let's give that a try, right? Yep. Because I like the entertainment factor of that, and I think it encourages them to be creative. And I do 3 different solutions rather than just one, because of the ADHD brain tendency to be black or white, all or nothing. Yep. So if one doesn't work, it's ruined. Yeah. We're never going to solve that, right? So we go through for 3. And then we ended up landing on a solution for this predictable problem, which was looking for the barrier. The barrier was, I had assumed, sensory sensitivity. When I spoke to Harvey, the barrier was actually that he comes downstairs when he wakes up to eat breakfast. And the barrier was he doesn't like going back upstairs. That feels like a backtrack, right? Yep. So we put the toothbrush, and this is Harvey's suggestion, in the center of the dining room table. So he eats breakfast and brushes his teeth straight after. It lives on the dining room table. Do I want that there for my house aesthetic? Probably not. But that is a great example of making your environment work for you and not worrying about what it looks like for other families. But that's a simple environmental change that now works for him, because that is where it lives and it's right in his line of sight. And it's stopping him from having to go back upstairs, which was the barrier.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love a couple of things you said there. Getting the child involved in the solution is brilliant, because as someone who lives with ADHD myself, and, you commented before, we don't like being told what to do. And I don't know, I don't think it's like an oppositional thing. It's just that it doesn't resonate with me if somebody else comes up with it. But if you engage me with it, then I'm all in. Like you say, that problem solving thing. And yes, I might have silly suggestions and so on just because that's fun. But, I think that's a great life skill to be able to do that problem solving together. And as a parent, it means it's not all sitting on your shoulders either to be this, super detective to work out what's the issue here when, hey, let's just have a chat about it. I imagine those sort of conversations, you'd have to be careful with your timing of them. You probably wouldn't want to have that conversation in the middle of a toothbrush meltdown.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you brought that up, right? And half of this is supporting parents to be able to coach a little bit, right? Yeah. So we don't raise a friction point in the middle of the friction point. And in fact, we're likely to get a toothbrush thrown at us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's wait for regulation. Now, unfortunately for me, my children, their time where they're open for these predictable problem discussions is right when I'm at my weakest, right before bed. And all of a sudden, they're open to talking about the problems of the world, right? Like bedtime, I'm exhausted, and they're like, now we can solve the problems of the world, right? But now I'm so refined in how we do these coaching discussions and solve these predictable problems that we can get through it quite quickly. And we also don't want to make the mistake of trying to solve all of these things at once.
Yeah.
The skill is teaching our kids to be problem solvers, because life is going to knock my kids down, right? It's just going to. It's going to throw predictable problems all the time. And I don't want it to bowl them over. I want them to go, I've got a problem solving brain. I'm just going to try some different things and experiment with it and see what works for me. And the excitable thing, the part that I get so excited about, is for most families, we throw patterns of what our solutions are. Because once you work out what works for a few things, you start to learn where a family's, where their sweet spot is for solutions. So it might be heavy on environmental changes, but it also might not. It might be heavy on regulation strategies. It might also need a little bit more scaffolding and structure. And I don't like the word routine, but I do like the word rhythm. Their rhythm just needs a bit of adjusting and supporting for them. And so this is the cool part about working with an ADHD coach, to look at these things. Like, how often do we have friction and then just not do anything about it because we're so darn busy, right?
Yeah. Yes.
It just keeps happening and just grinding away at us slowly to the point where we're like, I just can't today.
Yeah.
So we need to have that beautiful moment of reflection of partnering up with a coach. And it is very much a partnership, because I'm not the expert of their family. I'm the expert of my family. I know what works for the 40,000 other families that I've helped, but this family is unique and different. And I get so excited about hearing about these things, because we work together to work out what that is and discover it together.
And as an external person, you come with a kind of a bit of authority, don't you? As a parent, it is actually a little bit difficult in that parent-child relationship, which is often, a big tangled web of emotions and history and so on. It's very difficult in that situation to just become completely objective and say, okay, let's put all that aside and work out a solution. But when a third party comes in, with a fresh perspective, and particularly someone like you who's well-trained and, I imagine quite calm, and you've seen it before, it can really be a very positive experience. It can turn something that's, as you say, these frictions and these predictable moments into something that actually is, like you say, a really life-changing skill. I imagine not just for the kids, but for the parents as well.
And, families coaching is complex, because very rarely do you have two parents sitting in front of you that agree on what is going on.
Yes, yeah.
So you need to be able to really listen to each of the parents about what they feel about it, and then also be able to see it through the child's eyes, and then be prepared to give, advice but also let them give you feedback on things so that you can refine it. And let them experiment and work out what works for their family. It is a complex process, but one that, gosh, when you nail it, and I'm really quite, I love that momentum that we get. Like we get like little win, little win, little win, little win, and then all of a sudden, like after a couple of months, we're like we've made such. I'm very targeted, so I like to be able to reflect back how far we've come, and be able to show families, because when you're in it, it can feel really exhausting and intense. But when you are able to recognize those wins, there's something in it that it's just so encouraging. So it is a skill set, but being that neutral third party that people can talk to, it can provide so much value and so much support for families that really need it. Yeah.
And what's your headset? So I'm trying to get inside your head here, and I'm thinking of this from the perspective of a parent, that maybe doesn't have a coach or is not in a position to get a coach, but also someone like me, a tutor or a teacher, and thinking, okay, how do we be diagnostic in our thinking about these behaviours? So how do I get out of this space of being reactive or just going to my default mode, say as a teacher, okay, well, you're staying in at recess time or whatever, those kind of escalation style behaviour management tools. What sort of mindset do you need to have, or how do you go in and approach those situations? What are you thinking to yourself kind of diagnostically?
Well, my first thought is it working for anyone? Right? So I would absolutely throw any strategy if it worked, right? Worked in the long term, right? Like things might work once, but does it actually work for anyone? We know that regulation for everyone is very important. So it's not just regulation for the child. I love how Russell Barkley talks about regulation as not emotional regulation, but emotional incontinence, right? Because it just falls out of us. And so even as a teacher, when you're in front, we make ADHD behaviours mean all sorts of things. Yeah. So if you're standing in front of the classroom, the child is having a challenging behaviour. Now, we would very much view that as just communication, that something needs a bit of support. But at the front of the classroom, it feels like disrespect. It feels like they just won't do it, right? But actually it's can't. Yeah. So what do we need to do to support our regulation so we can be in a position to support that student? Now, this is so hard because we all have emotional incontinence, right? It's all just falling out of us. Yeah. And so we need to have a really strong regulation game. And as a parent, I can tell you that is so tricky. Like if I don't take a beat when some of the stuff is going on inside my household, which is like it's a lot. Yeah. I'm not gonna pretend it's a lot. There's huge things going on all the time. Yeah. Like it might be on fire right now. I don't know.
And sometimes it's even just little things as well that drive you crazy.
But I need to be able to take a breath before I speak, because otherwise what comes out of my mouth, that first thing that comes out of my mouth is venom, and it's dangerous. Yeah. And it causes trauma. Yeah. And that is a really hard skill to master, particularly if you have ADHD yourself and you have poor impulse control, because that first thing can happen. But it happens to teachers too, because if your regulation game isn't strong and you don't have a really set go-to of things that you use, and I really think that this needs to be work outside the moment, because you need to know what those things are that you can do to regulate before you act. Now, of course, this is not safety related. If it's safety related, jump in, do whatever you need to do. Yep. Say the wrong thing, who cares? Like whatever, it's safety related. Keep
Rescue
them alive.
The situation. Yeah.
But most of the time it isn't, and we actually make things worse by going in, by adding pressure, adding shame, making it mean something completely about respect, which it just isn't. It's just a can't, and it's a can't yet. Yeah. Right? They can't do it yet. And making it about skills building, which is executive function skills. What can we do to support them in this situation? Because I can tell you there's no child who gets up in the morning and goes, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to make everyone's life hell today. I am going to be like really frustrating for everyone. I'm going to stress everyone out and I'm just going to fail at all the things.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to just do that today. No one does that. That is not human nature. Human nature is to try your best in your ability and to take the easy road. So if it's not easy and they're consistently struggling, what is it that they need support with? And looking at that when you're outside of the moment, when you are regulated, is where we help our kids develop those skills. And I've seen it time and time again, how we can support and the beautiful magic, just what you do, Michael, with supporting them with tutoring and being able to give them that confidence. The same is true for other executive function skills that we've been talking about that are challenging. We help them, we scaffold it, we give them some things to try, and then we refine it. And once you have that in your tool belt, you kind of go, stuff doesn't knock you around as much because you're like, oh, well, this is just time awareness. So I know I've got a few things that I can try for here. I'm going to throw something at it and see what happens.
Here are my strategies for time awareness.
Yeah, here they are. I already know what they are. I know what works for me. And that is where that confidence comes from. And so for a teacher at the front of the classroom or a parent standing in front of their kids, know that it is triggering. Like it feels really intense in that moment. But if we know what we can do to regulate ourselves first and know what strategies consistently work for that student, we can make a whole world of difference. We can be that person that student needs.
Sometimes coming up with those strategies is difficult. Now, like I live with ADHD, and so you would kind of think I'd do well with tutoring students that live with ADHD, but I actually think it's the opposite because it takes so much effort for me to stay focused. Sometimes the effort is so huge that a student can be doing the wrong thing and I don't even notice because I have to hold it together so much, to kind of keep that happening. And so I, personally find that quite difficult. I know exactly what you're talking about, of those feelings of like, I'm not doing a good job here, something's going wrong, how do I fix this? And I really like the idea of doing that outside of the situation, outside of the circumstances. But sometimes you get stuck. So sometimes you would have a student where you might have tried 2 or 3 things and it hasn't worked. And so, let's say I've done all the right things and I've taken the time, I'm in that quiet, regulated moment and I'm doing the predictable problem. What are my reactions to it going to be? But I'm out of ideas. Where do you get that kind of inspiration of things to try?
That's a good question. I think I would love to, if it's okay with you, talk about how I work with the ADHD brain because it helps us know what strategy to go for. So this is not, you're not going to find it in a textbook. This is a Sharonism. And I created it because my simple brain that really needs procedures, right, to run. Yeah. I found every bit of literature on ADHD and strategies just so confusing that I couldn't draw on it in the moment. And I think this is what you're describing, that you just get to this point where you're like, ugh, and you go into paralysis because you feel stuck. And this has helped me be able to know what the road forward is. So I picture above my kid's head, believe me, it's going to get weird, right? Okay, it's going to get weird. I picture above my kid's head pinball arms. You know that the machine, and you push the button, the little arms come up. Yep. And so they are there above my kids' heads because I'm very visual. And we have, I'm actually, for the people listening to this, I am absolutely doing this. It is very weird. So we have 3 modes. We have open, we have closed, and we have neutral, where they're either open or closed. Yep. Now, you've got to think to yourself, what opens it? Praise opens it. Asking questions opens it, allowing them to ask questions. So for the teachers, if your child with ADHD in the classroom is asking questions, do not say wait till the end. Let them ask the questions. That is an open brain strategy. They are trying to engage in the class. Let them do it. Don't make them wait. And the other thing, don't make them wait because they will just not listen to the rest of the things that you're saying because they'll be just trying to remember that question.
Because they know if they don't keep repeating it, they'll forget it.
Yes. So allow them to ask questions. So novelty opens it. So this is why if we talk in a funny accent, make a fart noise, whatever, you're going to get everyone's attention straight away.
Yep.
Anything that's a bit different and changed it up and exciting. Anticipation opens it. So what are we looking forward to? The sense that they're liked, the sense that it's easy, the sense that they're doing well. So you can fall back on these things to open the brain, to open those arms, to get them back engaged in what you're doing. Then let's look at what closes it. Negative emotion closes it. So if you throw shame, you're closing it. If you the sense that they're not liked, the sense that it's hard, monotony, boredom. Now this is going to be particularly challenging for tutors and things like that. That's why we've got to keep it so much more interesting and change it up. And so we know that these are the things: pressure, overwhelm. All those ones are what closes it. Now I want to preface it by saying that pressure is different to urgency. Urgency has novelty and it's an open brain strategy. This is why we leave our assignments to the last minute. This is why I have so many clients that work as paramedics and emergency room nurses and things like that, because they do very well in urgency. Yeah. It is a solid ADHD strategy, but it's just a very it's an exhaustive one if you only run urgency.
Yes.
So we know body doubling, that's got novelty, right? You introduce someone else. And so that's why tutoring does work, because it's not the parent.
Yes.
I can't stress that enough. It's not the parent. You've got someone independent. You're working one-on-one, so you're body doubling and you've got novelty. It's great. So thinking about what opens and closes it helps. Now, the third mode is habit. That's when we're neither actively engaged or shut. And that's things like automatic muscle memory things. That's where we need to get some of those monotonous tasks, like getting ready for school in the morning, to that habit stage. That's tricky. We've got to use the open brain strategies to get there. But it can absolutely be done. Now, what we want to do is think about it. Like if we're picturing those flippers, the pinball arms, above our child's head, if we can see it shutting and we're going into a closed brain, which you can really picture it once you can start seeing it in their body language, in their how they're talking, how sharp the sentences are getting.
Sometimes when they walk in the room, you can already see they're in that state before they've started.
Pinball arms are closed, right? Yeah. And so we need to be able to open it again. So what do? We throw an open brain strategy, and we spend a couple of minutes in going to open brain, asking them questions, talking about something they're interested in, looking about what they're looking forward to, giving them some praise for something they did last time, throwing a bit of novelty in there. We can just run through those ones that we know consistently open the brain. Yeah. And what we get taught as parents and even teachers is that when we have a closed brain, what do? We push against it even harder. Okay, so we apply more pressure, and it just is so intense. And this is why we see those unlucky behaviors like hitting and things like that, because we push them into fight or flight, and we apply more pressure, we apply more shame, and then we wonder why it doesn't work. And, a child with a lucky behavior is a shutdown. That's got a child in paralysis, which we can push them into with a closed brain. A child with an unlucky behaviour is an aggression. Now, both of them are exactly the same nervous system response, and I view them very, very the same. Yeah. But they are just one causes a lot of attention and causes suspension, and one's just a quiet kid in the classroom and doesn't get any repercussions from that. So it is important to know that when the flippers are closed, that we just revert to open brain strategies, and it'll be quicker. People are like, I don't have time for that, right? But I can tell you what's that have it dealing with a meltdown, supporting an incident of an aggression, a child that has been pushed into fight or flight. It takes so much longer to support them rather than just throwing a couple of open brain strategies in there.
Yeah, getting them back from that state is very difficult. So I think of that in terms of my tutoring and think, well, I actually have some things here that the kids really like that I start with. And so it starts with something they like. So, I've got a whiteboard here and we do a shared story. So each kid can do a little picture and add to the story, and the story builds as it grows. So it's a low pressure, fun thing. They come in, they see what happened to the story since I was here last week. They can add to it. And it's so straight away, it's like, okay, I'm not under pressure. And I can imagine, is that the sort of thing you're talking about? I can imagine in a classroom, you could build a bit of a routine if there's a student that's coming in with those closed flippers. Is there something they enjoy, even if it's a little job to do?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, there used to be the bin monitor, and I'm sure they still have those things, but, something like that's, I can get success, I can be helpful, it's positive.
Oh, well, firstly, like that story piece that you just said about your tutoring, that's amazing, because not only are you using novelty there, like it's something a bit different, but you're also using anticipation because they're wondering what happened to the story from last time. So that's beautiful. And it's also taking the pressure off, right? Like it's an easy win. Like give them easy, quick wins at the start to help.
You can't be wrong. There's no mistakes to be made. It's impossible to do something wrong here. All you're doing is adding to a story or...
Yes, and kids with ADHD generally, and you will hear me make some generalizations here about ADHD for the purpose of this podcast, right? But you get to be the driver's seat about whether you think it's appropriate. But kids with ADHD generally love to feel important and generally love to do extra jobs. And so if you can say to them, like if you can see that they're becoming dysregulated, like don't underestimate the opportunity to give them an extra job. So you can go like, hey, can you just take this very important note to the office, right? And they walk to the office, they hand a note that says, please keep Isaac busy for a couple of minutes and give him a biscuit, right? Of course, he can't read that. The office ladies make a fuss of him and like talk about how great he is at delivering notes and how he did that really important job. He eats a biscuit. He walks back to the classroom. He's gotten outside, which we know outside is the great regulator, removing him from the environment, giving him a break. And then you bring him back to the class. He feels important and, he's now regulated. He's now open brain, back ready to learn. And, it's so much quicker and easier to help them to feel supported and give them what they need, but in a not obvious way. Like I want to say an accommodation isn't an accommodation if we give it as a punishment. Yeah. I've seen teachers go outside and jump on the trampoline. That's not accommodation. That's not an accommodation. That is a punishment. That's exclusion in disguise.
Yeah.
Right? So we want to make sure that we're doing accommodations, but in a way that child feels comfortable with, because not all kids are comfortable delivering the extra note. My children absolutely were. They would have loved that. Like they love the biscuit in the office, right? Like that's super important to them. But also, not all kids are comfortable with eye contact. Not all kids are comfortable with verbal praise. So we've got to be able to meet that child with what they need. But the good news is once we discover these things, like they're patterns, right? So we can use them across the board and we can support other professionals in their lives to be able to know those things too about them.
Oh, that's so brilliant. I could see a school even having that kind of as a school strategy. You know what I mean? So it's not just necessarily the teacher that's got to work it out, but some strategies already built into the system where here are, a few escape valves, when you see a kid that's being dysregulated and kind of get there before it becomes extreme.
Well, we often give kids these pass outs, right, which I think is very good. Like I think every child should have that ability to hand in a card, to go for a walk, right, to regulate. But the problem is with ADHD is that a lot of the time we're not recognizing it until we're too late. Like we're too dysregulated that we don't recognize out as an option. Okay, so this is why we get stuck in arguments or we get stuck in situations where we're not comfortable. And it might be a social situation where we just keep going because we're stuck. We're not sure how to get out of it. And so the pass out or the important job is a great way of offering that accommodation, but in a way that saves space, because it's not really saying you need a break. Because you say you need a break to a child with ADHD, they're going to go, no, I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't.
Yep. How dare you? How do you know what I need?
Yeah, you don't tell me what I need. I'll tell you what So we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that suits the ADHD brain, that actually works for them. Yeah. And works for everybody. And the good news is that with ADHD strategies, when we have the right strategies for kids with ADHD, is everyone benefits. Everyone benefits. Everyone in the class. It's only when we run all those neurotypical strategies or keep applying pressure that the child with ADHD suffers.
Yeah, the pressure is the killer, isn't it? Pressure is really difficult. Now, I saw on your website that you have a predictable problems chart.
Yes.
And I loved it because, we've been talking, and this may just be my brain, but I love structure. You know what I mean? When there's a difficult problem and, you yourself are dysregulated, it's difficult to get your thoughts together, you're feeling anxious, it's hard to think, where do I even start with coming up with ideas to address this, problem behaviour? I don't want to make it all about problem behaviour, because sometimes it's not, is it? Sometimes it's just disengaged. Sometimes it's the invisible kid that is not a problem at all. In fact, you forget they're even there because they're kind of mentally checked out. But I love your predictable problems chart, which gives a really clear, simple process to go through. And I imagine once you've done it a few times, you don't need the chart anymore. It kind of becomes second nature as to this is the process. Do you think it would be useful to talk us through how that process works and how that chart works?
Yes, of course. So I'll put we can put a link to this in the show notes. I've got a resource and I've got a video that shows people how to use it as well.
Yeah, that's where I got it. I loved it.
Oh, great. I really like that it is a written chart. I would encourage people to actually use the chart. Yep. Now, the reason I like that is it gets it out of our head and externalizes the problem. Okay, yep. So whatever the predictable problem is. Now, the problem isn't the person, right?
Yeah.
And I want parents to be careful how they position themselves. It's not us versus the child, right? And this is what happens all the time in parenting, and I catch myself doing it and then I have to beat myself up about it because it's not us against the child. It's us and the child against what the problem is.
Yes. So
the problem is maybe screen time, right? Like 100% of all the parents that I work with, like so it's us working collaboratively to solve the problem. It's not me against the child. So it puts us in this chart, gives us the ability to sit on the same side as our child and externalize whatever that thing is, which I like. I like that positioning. And so what we do is what we do as parents is we want to solve the problem for our child, right? We want to go in and go, well, you know what you could do, and you know what I think you should do. And anything that starts off with anything that's got a should in it, you can just forget about it. And in fact, anytime you make a grand announcement in your household, if you make a grand announcement and go like, family, from now on, we're all going to be the type of family that uses this shoe rack, right? No one's ever going to do that, okay? You make a grand announcement, it's dead. It's dead. It's dead in the water. Yeah. So what I like that we do is we analyze what the actual friction point is. Yep. So we actually ask our child to describe that, and we really get in their shoes. Now, we don't offer any advice about what it is or why it's happening. We listen to them, and all our job is to understand what it is like from their point of view. And this is the part that parents gloss over really fast. We think we know, just like you heard me with the toothbrush, we think we know why the friction's occurring, so we don't stay here for too long, and we make that bit too short. Now, this is the most important step. We need to understand what it's like from that individual's point of view.
And they need to feel listened to.
Yes.
Now, I don't, I haven't used your chart, so to speak, because it's fairly new to me, but, when I'm having these kind of discussions with a student, I will deliberately and obviously take notes. So they really know that I'm listening to them and I'm not just kind of sitting there and daydreaming while they're talking. I'll do dot points and I'll read them back to them afterwards to make sure, have I got it right? Because I think something really concrete like that says, I'm really serious about this. I'm not just, asking for your opinion and then I'm going to bulldoze you with, well, here's what I think. I'm with you. Like, I really think that gets them engaged because now they're part of it, aren't they? Now it's not you telling them what to do. Now they've invested because you've taken the time to listen.
100%. And I mean, we all like that. We can't, how often have we talked to someone about a problem that we're experiencing, and if they go, oh yeah, I had that and I did this.
Yeah.
And you think, bugger off. How do you know? how do you know what I'm going through and how I feel about it, right?
Yeah.
Like no one likes that. So then once we've heard them out and we really understand, and we make sure we check that we understand because we ask clarifying questions. We ask and we repeat and parrot back what they have said to us, which is important because they need to know that we understand it.
And you've got a spot on your chart for that too, haven't you? To record that. Yeah.
I'm very serious about that one. And then we ask them for what the solution might be. Now, we go for 3. One of them, as I said, they might throw out a bogus one, right? And that's fine. We write it down. We take that very seriously, okay? Because it just shows that they're participating in this. Mm-hmm. And we write down the possible solutions. And then we work through experimenting with them and giving it a run, giving it a try. And we document what works because it's not important that we nail the solution, right? The thing is that we want to teach, the skill that we want to teach is that we're experimenting and we're able to problem solve and workshop these solutions. Because there's no failure in this game. This is the cool part about it. There's no failure. There's just more information. We're gathering data about what works for that individual. And I love the experimental mindset. I always say that we should approach challenging behaviors with curiosity, like turn towards them with curiosity rather than turning away with judgment. And this is hard for parents and teachers to model because this is not how we were parented. Yeah. We were parented when we had a big feeling or we threw a challenge, go to your room and sort that out.
How dare you speak to me like that?
Yeah. Eye contact got turned away. It was shut down. And so what we're doing is completely the opposite. We're getting curious about it. We're wondering about it. And then we're asking them to come up with solutions. Now, we can partner with them if they've got nothing. If they throw, I don't know, it's usually a sign that we need to coach them a little bit more around it. But we can partner with them. Like if they ask us for our opinion, we can give it. Like it's not about not having a voice. It's more about encouraging that problem-solving skill because the buy-in. Yeah. Just like you said, if you are a part of that solution, of that strategy, how much more likely do you reckon you're going to be of giving it a run and getting the information on? Like 10 billion times more likely to take ownership of that solution as well. And so it's a fundamental part, and it is based off Ross Green. You know, Ross Green's explosive child model does that, but he only goes to one solution. And I think that this is the thing with ADHD specific, we want to give them multiple because of that black or white or all or nothing approach that often comes along. We need to have a few options to go through. And
engaging the creative brain like that, often the first solution, even if you are regulated, often the first solution come up with might actually be a little knee-jerk, or there might even be a little bit of, I'll get you, in a little bit of revenge or, something in it. But forcing multiple solutions kind of lets you move past that, first reaction kind of solution. I think, we could try this, we could try that. And what I like is it also gives you somewhere else to go if it doesn't work. So it's like, okay, well, as you said before, this isn't the end of it and we screw it all up and throw it all away. Let's have a look at solution 2, solution 3, see if that works. I really love that model. And as you said, you can download it off your website.
Completely free. And, I want to reassure parents too that it's not the only road, right? Like there's environmental changes, there's like different scaffolding we can do. But the skill of being able to coach your own child or coach the child in your classroom in a way that suits their brain, that isn't telling or instructing. So instead of saying to your child, like, can you go and put your shoes on? Like, you need to go and put your shoes on. To ADHD brain that's oppositional, it's going to be like, no, I absolutely am not. I'm going to do everything else.
You can't make me.
Other than that, but but you can have different scaffolding in place, like a chart, like the good old visual chart. But instead of using it like a reward system, which I'm not a fan of, you just point to the chart and go, hey, can you tell me what you need to do next? Right? So that's giving them autonomy. I don't care which order they do the things in, right?
Yeah.
Like they're all good choices.
Yep.
But can you tell me, we're asking them to think about what should I do next. It's so much more pleasant than being told what to do.
Yeah.
Let's hand some of that back to our kids who who, this is how their brains work. And it makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. The externalizing of it as well. Why are you not into reward charts, can I ask?
I don't love anything that's delayed gratification for ADHD. So if I use the analogy, show me the ice cream, right? So for my son, I said to him, if you can be good in this appointment, like this is pre-ADHD coaching, I would never say good now. But, if you can be good in this appointment, I will give you an ice cream. And he's like, show me the ice cream, right? So he's not committing to anything unless you can show me the thing in front of you.
Yes.
And there's truth to this in the way that for people with ADHD, there's usually 2 times, now and not now. Now is right now, and not now could be 1 year, 1 week, one month, I don't know.
Yes.
Right. So they like to, when we're giving tasks, we like to give it a definite end. But we also, with rewards, the delayed gratification, the reward in 7 days or after it could be 1 week, 1 year. Well, it's not. When is that?
Yeah,
right.
That's
like the time awareness things causes a problem for delayed gratification. Now, sometimes it can work with really big things if it's significant enough and it's got enough novelty. But generally, I wouldn't fall back on a reward because a reward has a hidden punishment in there too, like if you don't get it. So I prefer to rely on more intrinsic motivation and if we can't do that for some really boring stuff, going into that habit mode and using one of the open brain strategies to go to that mode, because it just hasn't shown to be that effective for me. If it's instant, like if you're studying, I've got, doctors that I've worked with that have had to get through medicine by bribing themselves with Maltesers, right?
Yes.
Like I read a paragraph, get a Malteser. Like I'm here for that. That's good. That's instant gratification. But anything delayed where you've got to go to the thing to get the thing, you've got to mark a chart to get the thing. It's just, it becomes a bit more challenging and not every kid can master it. Yeah.
So it's not so much about rewards. It's more about providing the reward in the moment.
Yes.
when it's appropriate, like right when the behaviour happens or doesn't happen, that's when the reward happens. So I really like the idea of immediacy. It really reminds me of computer games and that instant reward. And we know that kids living with ADHD love it, don't they? Give them a computer game and they're there. And I think it's because you get that reward, challenge, reward, continuously while you're doing it rather than that delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. One last question, if I may. I think the hardest thing from my experience when I talk to parents is homework. This is tricky. This is often the flashpoint, isn't it? You've got homework or you've got an assignment to do. How do we navigate that? What's your experience with getting students to do the things that they really don't want to do, as part of this? It's a predictable problem, isn't it?
Look, first of all, I think that we really check in on homework. So is it necessary, right? So is it really, really important? So whether it's for a child with a specific learning challenge and we need to support them in an extra way, I write a letter to all my sons' teachers at the start of the year saying, look, we're not going to be doing it. But if there's something particularly important like a project or something like that, please let me know via email. Okay, so I'm giving them that option, but specifying that we're not going to be doing it. We do reading, because I can choose books that they're interested in, because it's all about motocross and I know too much about that now. But so I will scaffold it a little bit for them, and I will opt out of things that aren't necessary. Now, I do also have a high schooler. Now, this becomes much more tricky in high school. I can't engineer, because sometimes I will engineer the homework to be in line with things that they're interested in, because that's an open brain strategy. We're more likely to be interested in and participate in things that we're interested in. But what we can do in high school is, number one, we want all the teachers to email through. You can give the assignment to the student, absolutely, but we need to know about it. We need to know about it as a parent. We need to have that in their learning support plan. Then what I go and do is I go and put that homework sheet, because some of them, honestly, like I read it and there's this big paragraph and then these questions and I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
so
me too.
I put it into a program like Goblin Tools, which is a completely free AI program that'll break down tasks for ADHD-specific tasks, or I'll put it into ChatGPT and I'll say, hey, I'm going to work on this 15 minutes a day. Break it down for me into manageable chunks.
Yes.
So it's not giving me the answer because that's illegal, although I'm sure my son does that occasionally. But what it does is break it down for me so that we can make it into manageable. Now, that's a solid ADHD strategy to make it manageable.
Yep.
If I can, I'll negotiate that we don't do as much if it's too many steps. If I can't, then we will make it manageable. Mm-hmm. Then I use some sort of visual to be able to plan it out. So we're marking off as we do certain points. I really like them to have a visual to see how we're progressing. Not all kids do well with digital timers and all those sorts of things. That can be pressure, but for some kids that's also novelty. So know where your child sits with some of those things.
Yep.
I like to use anchor in routine or rhythms a fair bit. So knowing when your child shines. Now, heads up, usually it's not the end of the day when medication's worn off and we're a bit over it and we've been working really hard to participate in a school environment all day. So for some kids, it might be we're doing it in the morning, right? And that's hard for parents because that's a really sucky time of the day for parents. But sometimes that helps. I also like the idea of body doubling. So this is where we get an experienced professional like a tutor. Like I can't stress to you parents enough, like not you. Not you.
You can't do it all.
Yeah, you can't do it all, right? And the idea of having someone there that is dedicated one-on-one for that specific time, that's body doubling, that has expertise, that is able to support your child. At my son's high school, they have a program where year 12 students actually help the younger kids in these short burst sessions. If you can ask your high school to do something like that, that is spectacular because year 12 students are cool. What are parents? Not cool, right? So the child is much more likely to participate if you can get them to do that. So something like that. So body doubling we know is a solid strategy. Having visual or environmental supports, and this is sometimes we get this wrong, like the timers or minimizing distraction when actually that child needs a whole host of things going on, like the TV on, listening to a podcast, listening to a music. You know, it might be a different sort of processing style to what ours is. Gamifying as much as possible so we can when we get to this part, have the instant reward or whatever suits extra screen time or whatever after this sprint. Knowing that most people with ADHD are sprinters. We're not marathon runners, right? So going in those short bursts, and you can take the pressure off by saying something like, hey, we're just going to give this a go for 5 minutes. I'll put the timer on. If you don't want to do it after the 5 minutes, that's when we can stop. Now, this also works for cleaning and chores. But you can say something like, we're just going to give it a solid run for 5 minutes. And if you don't want to do it after that, that's completely fine. Now, 5 minutes is better than nothing. And sometimes 5 minutes is enough to allow us to get a little bit more confident on it and get started.
That's right.
And then, of course, mark the win. Like mark that they did it. Mark effort, not completion. And so, you might do something like a high five, a praise, a favorite snack or whatever, to mark it, because what gets marked gets repeated. So what gets celebrated gets repeated. And so we can use those things to our advantage, but also knowing that as a parent, it's the most challenging thing you can do. You're using something that is a bit less exciting at a very vulnerable time of day. And so, it is something that is really hard. So first, assessing what's necessary to make sure that that is important to that student, keeping it, really giving it a definite end. Give it an end. Like people with ADHD, they like to know when things are over. Give them an end. Like even if you, say if you're cleaning Lego on the floor, this is a slight diversion, but it shows what I mean. If you've got a whole room full of mess, just get a hula hoop and throw it over the Lego, right?
Yeah.
Just clean up that bit because the hula hoop doesn't lie. And once you know the end, it takes away so many barriers to the task. And so if you picture the hula hoop but for homework, put a ring around just the bits that they need to do in that time, because it helps them go, okay, it makes it sort of measurable and gives it an end. And I can just get through this discomfort, rather than being this endless discomfort. They've already got enough discomfort in their day.
Oh, I love that. I use timers for kind of a similar purpose. You know, if I see a student's checking out or having trouble, I've got like a little timer app that's got a visual timer, and I just kind of negotiate with them and say, look, do you think you can give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes? And like then we have an agreement and I set the timer and we go, and then we know that it's going to be finished and there'll be a break afterwards. I find that really works because they know that, like you say, they know that there's an end to it. And it's not like, I feel bad now. It kind of feels like you're going to feel bad forever. That kind of time blindness.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where I stuff up constantly as a parent, right? Because I stack things. So I'll get an opening, they'll start doing the task, and then because I've got their attention and they're being compliant, I'll be like, well, while you're there, can you get your shoes on? And I'll stack it in, right? I see an opening and I go and I start stacking in extra things. And I think this happens at school too. You know, we see them doing a task and then we just start sliding in extra tasks. And it really does encourage an opt-out. It really does encourage the student to go, well, bugger it, I'm not doing that. So if you're going to give a definite end, like make sure you don't be like Sharon, stick to the end, right? Stacking causes so much opt-out and so much confusion.
Keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon, this has been so helpful. Even for me, like, you know, even personally for me, even if I never publish it, I think, oh, thank goodness I've had this conversation. Such useful skills and great advice. So if people are interested in your services, what do you offer and how can they connect with you? Do you have things, you know, for teachers, or is it mostly parents that you target?
I do a bit of both. So I do a lot of PD sessions for after school cares, for teachers, for workplaces and things. So that's available. I do have a short course coming out for teachers at some stage, which I think is helpful because it's been my experience that teachers are crying out for ADHD support. And they really want it. They really know that it is something that they need, but not just like support in generally like what ADHD is, but how it actually applies to the classroom and how we can support all the students in the classroom. And of course, save time, make it easier for everybody and helping them navigate that. So there's a few things that how they can connect with me. So I've got a massive free support group called ADHD and Families in Facebook. That's got, I think, 16,000 members in there now.
Yep.
So you can always go in there and post questions and get support. And I think that community piece is very important. There's the ADHD Families podcast, which you are on.
Yes, thank you so much.
And that is, you know, really great free resource. I have a whole website of free stuff. Like there's literally a page called Freebies, right, where you can go in and you can get all my free resources. I do free parent training every month. But I also have paid services. Like I've got a 6-week program for families that have a child that's newly diagnosed. This sets them up, does all those environmental changes and really educates them at the beginning of that journey. And then I've got a membership, which is more for all ages. And we interview different experts and do practical strategies and body doubling sessions so we can actually do the thing. Like consuming content about ADHD is not enough, guys. We need to take action on it. So this is what supports you to do that. And then, of course, there's private services as well. I work with families. I work with teachers. I work with adults about their own ADHD too. So there's a whole plethora of things, right? And it's all designed to support anyone who's supporting ADHD and to support our gorgeous humans or families just like mine to make things a little bit easier. Like let's just shortcut it a little bit because I know that there's so many rabbit holes that you can go down. And let's face it, some of it is just makes your life harder. So let's just make things easier.
And I really love how positive it is. You know, we often talk about ADHD in a really negative sense, but there are such fantastic things that come with ADHD as well. You know, the problem solving, the engagement. Once you get those flippers open and once the child's engaged, then they're super engaged and super enthusiastic. And I sometimes think, you know, trying to focus on the positive and get that engagement could be a really good part of the strategy, rather than always focusing on the negative and we've got to stop this behaviour or stop that behaviour. Instead, in getting them engaged and getting them enthusiastic and getting the flippers open, I think, you know, I love that about your strategy and your podcast and the things I've seen you do, you know, keeping it positive like that's brilliant, I think.
There's a reason why all my favourite humans in the world have ADHD, right? I think it's awesome. I love it. I love their energy. I find it exciting. I love working with the families that I work with. I find it energizing, and because I love spending time with ADHD brains, right? Like I think it's amazing. And sometimes I like, you know, with my clients, they come up with the best ideas, right? And I'm like, whoa, like it's exciting to me to see people use their incredible brains for different things and to think differently. I think there's that, you know, ADHD can throw challenges and it can web you, right? But you can also use it to your advantage and helping particularly our kids who are the most vulnerable to develop skills around that so it can support them and be an advantage to them. It's just priceless in my opinion.
It's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And just to let people know, I've just finished being a guest on your podcast as well. So we've done a double whammy today. Thank you everyone for listening. I really love it when people leave comments and engage. So feel free to ask questions or get in touch with us. Please do check out Sharon's website, The Functional Family, and all the great resources we've talked about. Sharon, once again, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.